The locket hit the floor with a sound that broke Cynthia Carter's heart. Oops! Brittany Ashworth's voice dripped with mock concern as she ground her designer heel into the delicate gold chain, crushing the antique clasp. I'm so sorry. Was that important? Cynthia dropped to her knees, hands shaking as she gathered the pieces. The locket had split open, the tiny photograph inside, her mother's face, now creased and torn. Please, Cynthia whispered. Please, that was my mother's. Your mother's? Brittany laughed, looking back at her brother Derek and their friend Maya, who stood uncertainly behind them. Let me guess, she bought it at a pawn shop? Or maybe she stole it, like mother like daughter? I didn't steal anything. Really? Derek stepped forward, holding up Cynthia's worn backpack. Then explain why Brittany's bracelet was in your bag. Cynthia's blood ran cold. She'd never touched Brittany's bracelet. She'd never even been near it. But there it was. A diamond tennis bracelet worth at least $20,000, tumbling out of her backpack onto the dorm hallway floor. They'd planted it. I didn't. That's not. You put that there. Sure we did. Brittany's smile was razor sharp. That's what thieves always say. A crowd had gathered now. Other students. RAs. Everyone watching the scholarship girl get caught stealing from the richest family on campus. You know what happens to thieves at Columbia? Brittany stepped closer, her voice carrying for maximum audience. Expulsion, criminal charges, your pathetic little scholarship, gone, your future, over. She crouched down to Cynthia's level, her voice dropping to a whisper only Cynthia could hear. That's what happens when poor girls forget their place. Cynthia looked up at her, this girl who had everything, who had never worked for anything, who destroyed people for entertainment. And something shifted behind Cynthia's eyes. Not fear, not despair. Something colder. You have no idea who I am, Cynthia said quietly. Brittany laughed. I know exactly who you are. Nobody. Nothing. A charity case who thought she could play in our world. She stood, brushing off her designer jeans. Maya, grab the bracelet. We're filing a police report. I want this thief arrested by morning. Maya Santos hesitated, her eyes meeting Cynthia's for just a moment. Something like guilt flickered across her face, but she bent down and picked up the bracelet anyway. The crowd parted as the Ashworths walked away, leaving Cynthia on her knees in the hallway, clutching the broken pieces of her mother's locket. The only thing she had left of the woman who died in her arms 5 years ago, destroyed, for entertainment. Cynthia stayed on the floor for a long moment, tears streaming silently down her face. Then she pulled out her phone, not to call the police, not to call her father, to send a text to a number she hadn't used in 18 months. It's time. I need everything you have on the Ashworth family. The response came in seconds. How deep do you want to go? Cynthia looked at the broken locket in her hand, at her mother's torn photograph, all the way. Brittany Ashworth thought she'd just destroyed a nobody. She had no idea she'd just declared war on a billionaire's daughter. And Cynthia Carter was about to show her what real power looked like. You just watched a college student get framed for theft, publicly humiliated, and have her dead mother's locket destroyed, all for the entertainment of rich bullies who thought she was powerless. But you don't know who Cynthia Carter really is. You don't know why she's hiding her identity, and you don't know what that text message just set in motion. Because here's the thing about underestimating people. When you target someone you think has nothing, you don't bother to check if you're wrong. And Brittany Ashworth is very, very wrong. If you've ever been bullied by someone who thought they were untouchable, if you've ever watched cruel people destroy others for sport, if you've ever wondered what would happen if the victim turned out to be more powerful than the bully could imagine, then stay with me. Because this story is about to show you that the quiet girl on her knees is sometimes the most dangerous person in the room. Hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to see what happens when the Ashworths discover who they just targeted. Now let me take you back to who Cynthia Carter really is, and why she's been hiding at Columbia University for the past year. Cynthia Carter had been invisible for exactly 14 months, not the kind of invisible where people don't notice you, the kind where they notice but dismiss you, where they see the thrift store clothes, the part-time coffee shop job, the scholarship status, and decide you're not worth knowing. She'd chosen that invisibility, cultivated it, hidden inside it. Because 14 months ago, Cynthia wasn't Carter. She was Calder. Cynthia Elaine Calder, only daughter of Marcus Calder, founder of Calder Technologies, net worth $14.7 billion. She'd grown up in a Manhattan penthouse, private jets, summer homes in the Hamptons and Aspen, everything money could buy, and none of it had saved her mother. Eleanor Carter Calder had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer when Cynthia was 12. 3 years of treatments, 3 years of hope and despair, 3 years of watching the strongest woman she knew fade away. She'd died holding Cynthia's hand. Her last words, "Promise me you'll become someone on your own terms, not your father's daughter, not a Calder. You, just you." Cynthia had promised, and when it came time for college, she'd made a decision that horrified her father's advisors. She would attend Columbia under her mother's maiden name. No Calder connections, no trust fund spending, no special treatment. She would earn everything herself. Her father had fought her on it. Marcus Calder hadn't built an empire by letting his daughter take unnecessary risks. "You don't have to prove anything," he'd argued. "You're already extraordinary." "I need to know if that's true," Cynthia had replied. "Without your name, without your money, without everyone treating me like I'm made of gold." In the end, Marcus had relented, partly because he respected her determination, partly because he'd grown up poor in Detroit and understood the value of earning your own way. But he'd insisted on one condition. She kept a security contact, someone who could help if things went wrong, someone with resources. Cynthia had agreed, hoping she'd never need to use it. For 14 months, she'd lived as Cynthia Carter, scholarship student, coffee shop barista, just another freshman trying to survive Columbia's brutal academic pressure. She'd made friends, real friends, who liked her for her humor, her intelligence, her kindness. Not for her father's private island. She'd struggled with problem sets, pulled all-nighters, eaten ramen when her paycheck ran short, and she'd loved it. For the first time in her life, she knew that when people smiled at her, it was genuine. When professors praised her work, it was earned. When she succeeded, it was hers. The only piece of her old life she'd kept was the locket. Her mother's locket. Antique gold, passed down through 4 generations of Carter women. Inside, a tiny photograph of Eleanor, taken when Cynthia was 3. Mother and daughter laughing in a garden, frozen in a moment of pure joy. Cynthia wore it every day, slept with it every night, touched it when she needed strength. It was irreplaceable, and Brittany Ashworth had just destroyed it, for sport. Cynthia sat in her dorm room now, the broken pieces of the locket spread on her desk. The photograph was ruined, torn, creased, smeared with dirt from Brittany's heel. She couldn't fix it. She couldn't undo what had been done. But she could make sure Brittany Ashworth understood what it felt like to lose something precious. Her phone buzzed. The security contact, a woman named Diana, who ran Calder Technologies' corporate intelligence division. Files incoming. The Ashworths are dirty, very dirty. "How do you want to proceed?" Cynthia looked at her mother's ruined photograph. "I want to know everything, every secret, every crime, every person they've hurt." She paused, then added, "And I want to know about Maya Santos. She seemed different. Get me her background too." Because Cynthia had noticed something in the hallway. Maya's hesitation, Maya's guilt, Maya's eyes, silently apologizing even as she picked up the planted bracelet. Not everyone in that group was cruel by choice. Some people were cruel because they thought they had no other option, and Cynthia Carter, who'd learned grace from a dying mother, knew the difference. The next 72 hours were hell. Brittany Ashworth had followed through on her threat. A police report was filed. The campus judicial board opened an investigation. Cynthia was suspended from her work-study job pending the outcome. Everywhere she went, whispers followed. "That's her, the scholarship girl who stole from Brittany. I heard she's been stealing for months. She seemed so nice. Guess you can't trust anyone." The dean called her in for a meeting, sat her down in a leather chair across from his mahogany desk. "Ms. Carter, these are very serious allegations. The Ashworth family is influential. They're pushing for your immediate expulsion." "I didn't steal anything," Cynthia said calmly. "The bracelet was planted in my bag." "Do you have any evidence of that?" "Not yet." The dean sighed. "Without evidence, it's your word against theirs. And frankly, Ms. Carter, the Ashworths have been generous donors to this institution for 3 generations. Their credibility is substantial." There it was, the truth behind the formality. Money talked, and Cynthia Carter, the poor scholarship student, had none, or so they thought. "I understand," Cynthia said quietly. "How long do I have before a decision is made?" "1 week. If you can't provide evidence of your innocence by then." The dean shook his head. "I'm sorry, my hands are tied." Cynthia left his office and walked across the campus quad, past students who avoided her eyes, past the coffee shop where her former co-workers pretended not to see her. She found a bench in a quiet corner and sat down. Then she opened her phone and began reading Diana's files. The Ashworth family wasn't just rich, they were corrupt. Harold Ashworth, Brittany's father, had built his real estate empire on insider trading and bribery. 3 SEC investigations, all quietly dropped after generous donations to the right political campaigns. Victoria Ashworth, their mother, ran a charity that existed primarily for tax evasion. 90% of donations went to administrative costs, which meant shopping trips and spa retreats. And the children were no better. Brittany had been accused of assault at her prep school, a girl who dared to date her ex-boyfriend. Broken nose, 3 stitches. The case was settled out of court with a 6-figure payment. Derek had 2 DUIs, both expunged from his record. One had put a pedestrian in the hospital, also settled quietly. They'd been hurting people their entire lives, and their money had made them untouchable, until now. But it was Maya Santos's file that made Cynthia pause. Maya wasn't like the Ashworths. She wasn't rich. She wasn't connected. She was the daughter of immigrants, first in her family to attend college, here on a full financial aid package. She'd been assigned a room with Brittany's friend group first semester, and according to emails Diana had acquired, she'd been systematically bullied into compliance. "If you don't help us, we'll make sure you lose your housing assignment. Do what we say, or we'll tell everyone you're here on charity. You belong to us now. Don't forget that." Maya wasn't a villain. She was a hostage. Cynthia stared at the screen for a long time. She had enough information to destroy the Ashworths, to expose their family's crimes, to turn their own weapons against them. But she had something else too. The knowledge that not everyone who hurt her deserved the same punishment. Some people needed destruction, others needed rescue. Here's what breaks my heart about this moment. Cynthia Carter was framed, humiliated, and nearly expelled for a crime she didn't commit. Her dead mother's locket, the only physical connection she had to the woman who raised her, was destroyed for entertainment. And the system was about to side with her abusers, because the Ashworths had money, had influence, had 3 generations of donations buying silence and complicity. That's how bullies operate. They don't just hurt you, they control the narrative. They make sure that when you speak up, no one believes you. They make sure that when you fight back, you're the one who gets punished. How many of you have been in Cynthia's position, targeted by someone more powerful, disbelieved by people who should have helped, watching your abuser smile because they know the system protects them? Subscribe if you've ever felt powerless against someone who thought they were untouchable, because sometimes the powerless have more power than anyone knows, and sometimes justice comes from unexpected places. The campus judicial hearing was held 5 days after the accusation. Brittany Ashworth arrived with a lawyer. Her parents sat in the front row, radiating the confidence of people who had never lost anything. Cynthia arrived alone. At least, that's what everyone thought. The hearing officer, a professor named Dr. Walsh, called the room to order. "We're here to review the allegation that Cynthia Carter stole a diamond bracelet valued at $23,000 from Brittany Ashworth. Ms. Ashworth, please present your case." Brittany's lawyer stood, smooth, polished, expensive. "The facts are simple. The bracelet was found in Ms. Carter's backpack, witnessed by multiple students. Ms. Carter has no explanation except to claim she was framed, an accusation with no evidence whatsoever." He sat down, smug. "Ms. Carter?" Dr. Walsh asked. "Your response?" Cynthia stood slowly. "Actually, I do have evidence." She placed a tablet on the table and pressed play. Security footage, clear as day. Brittany Ashworth, alone in the hallway, unzipping Cynthia's backpack and slipping the bracelet inside, looking around to make sure no one was watching, smiling. The room went silent. "Where did you get that?" Brittany's father sputtered. "That footage is private property." "It's campus security footage," Cynthia said calmly. Obtained through a formal request to the university. Anyone can request it. You just have to ask. Dr. Walsh stared at the screen, his face darkening. Ms. Ashworth, would you like to explain? Brittany's composure cracked. That's been doctored. She fabricated. There's more, Cynthia interrupted. She pulled up another file. Emails between Brittany and Derek, planning the setup. We plant the bracelet, she gets expelled, and another scholarship rat is gone. Make sure to break something of hers too. I want her to cry. This is going to be hilarious. The hearing officer's face went from dark to thunderous. These communications clearly indicate premeditation, Dr. Walsh said. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate conspiracy to destroy another student's academic career. You can't prove those emails are real, the Ashworth lawyer started. They came from Columbia's own server logs, Cynthia said, verified by the IT department this morning. She paused, letting the silence build. But that's not the real story here. This isn't the first time the Ashworths have done this. She placed a folder on the table. This contains documentation of 7 other students targeted by Brittany and Derek Ashworth over the past 3 years. 2 were expelled on false accusations. 1 dropped out after a harassment campaign. 4 more were coerced into silence with threats and intimidation. She looked directly at Brittany. You didn't steal from me because you wanted a bracelet. You stole from me because you enjoy destroying people. Because you've never faced consequences. Because your family's money has made you believe you're untouchable. Cynthia's voice was steady, cold, controlled. You're not untouchable, not anymore. Harold Ashworth's face was purple with rage. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I'll have you destroyed. I'll sue you into oblivion. Mr. Ashworth. Cynthia turned to face him. You should know that everything I've presented here has also been sent to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the New York State Attorney General, and 6 major news organizations. She paused. My name isn't Carter. It's Calder. My father is Marcus Calder. And unlike your family, mine knows the difference between using power to help people and using it to hurt them. The silence was absolute. Brittany looked like she'd seen a ghost. This hearing is concluded, Dr. Walsh said, his voice shaking slightly. Ms. Carter, Ms. Calder, the charges against you are dismissed. As for the Ashworths, I'll be recommending immediate expulsion and a referral to law enforcement. Cynthia gathered her materials and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she paused. Maya Santos wasn't part of this willingly. She was coerced. I have the evidence. Any punishment for her should take that into account. She left without looking back. Here's what Cynthia understood that the Ashworths never did. Power isn't about destroying people. It's about protecting them. She could have exposed the Ashworths the moment she found the evidence. Could have called her father, activated his army of lawyers, and crushed them without ever appearing in that hearing room. But she didn't. She gathered the evidence carefully, identified every victim, found the one person in the conspiracy who deserved mercy rather than destruction. And she did it herself, not hiding behind her father's name, not using her wealth as a weapon. She used the truth. That's the difference between the Ashworths and the Calders. One family uses power to hurt, the other uses it to heal. Subscribe if you believe that real power isn't about crushing your enemies. It's about doing what's right, even when destruction would be easier. Because sometimes justice means knowing who deserves mercy and having the strength to give it. The Ashworth family's fall was swift and spectacular. Within 48 hours of the hearing, the story had gone viral. News outlets couldn't resist the narrative. Billionaire's secret daughter exposes wealthy bullies, reveals years of systematic harassment. Columbia moved fast. Brittany and Derek were expelled within the week. Their family's name was stripped from 2 campus buildings that bore it, but that was just the beginning. The SEC investigation into Harold Ashworth accelerated. With public attention on the family, the agency couldn't bury it like they had before. Documents Cynthia had provided showed clear patterns of insider trading stretching back 15 years. Harold was indicted 3 months later. Fraud, securities violations, tax evasion. The trial lasted 6 weeks. He was convicted on 12 counts, 8 years in federal prison. Victoria Ashworth's charity was shut down by the state attorney general. The administrative costs were reclassified as embezzlement. She avoided prison time by cooperating with investigators, but her social standing was destroyed. No more galas, no more society pages, no more pretending to care about causes while stealing from them. And the children? Brittany tried to transfer to another university. 3 rejected her application before she found a small school in the Midwest that would take her, far from the spotlight, far from the life she'd known. Derek dropped out entirely. Last anyone heard, he was working at one of his father's former properties, now owned by new management, who didn't care about the Ashworth name. The family that had spent generations building power through cruelty watched it collapse in months. Not because Cynthia Calder had more money than them, because she had the truth, and she'd used it strategically, precisely, without mercy for those who'd shown none. But there was one person Cynthia hadn't forgotten, Maya Santos. The judicial board had followed Cynthia's recommendation. Maya was placed on academic probation rather than expelled. Her role in the conspiracy was acknowledged, but so was the coercion that had led to it. She was allowed to stay at Columbia, to continue her education, to escape the Ashworths' shadow. But Maya herself couldn't escape the guilt. She'd participated in destroying someone who'd done nothing to deserve it. She'd stood there while Brittany crushed Cynthia's locket. She'd picked up the planted bracelet. And even though she'd been threatened, manipulated, coerced, the choice had still been hers. 3 weeks after the hearing, Maya found Cynthia in the campus library. "Can I sit down?" Cynthia looked up from her textbook. "Sure." Maya sat, fidgeted, struggled to meet Cynthia's eyes. "I wanted to apologize, in person, for what I did." "You already apologized in your statement to the judicial board." "That was formal. This is real." Maya's voice cracked. "I watched them destroy your locket, your mother's locket, and I didn't do anything. I could have spoken up. I could have refused. But I was scared, and I was selfish, and I let them hurt you." Tears streamed down her face. "I know you could have destroyed me. You had every right to, but you didn't. You told them I was coerced. You saved my education, my future." She wiped her eyes. "Why?" Cynthia was quiet for a moment. "Because I could see the difference," she finally said, "between someone who enjoys cruelty and someone who's trapped by it." Maya stared at her, waiting for more. Cynthia closed her textbook. "When I was 15, my mother was dying. There was a nurse at the hospital, young, overworked, clearly exhausted. One night, she made a mistake with my mom's medication. Wrong dosage, not dangerous, but enough to scare everyone." She paused. "The other nurses wanted her fired. My father was ready to sue, but my mom asked to speak with her, alone." Maya listened intently. "I don't know what my mom said to her, but that nurse stayed, got additional training, became one of the best on the floor." Cynthia's voice softened. "She was with my mom at the end, held her hand when she passed." She looked at Maya. "My mother believed that people who make mistakes out of fear aren't the same as people who choose cruelty. She believed in second chances, not because people deserve them, but because sometimes that's what transforms someone." Maya's tears fell freely now. "I don't deserve?" "Maybe not," Cynthia agreed, "but I'm not giving you this chance because you deserve it. I'm giving it because my mother taught me that's how you break cycles, not through punishment, through grace." She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "This is information about a summer research fellowship, fully funded, in a lab that studies immigrant health outcomes, something I thought might matter to you." Maya took the envelope with trembling hands. "The application deadline is next week. I've already spoken with the program director. She's expecting your materials." "How did you—" "I read your file. I know you want to go to medical school. I know you're struggling to afford test prep and application fees." Cynthia shrugged. "This fellowship would cover all of that, and it would give you experience that matters." Maya stared at the envelope like it might evaporate. "Why would you do this for me? After everything?" Cynthia smiled, a sad, gentle smile that reminded Maya of someone she'd never met. "Because my mother's locket can't be fixed. That's gone. But your future doesn't have to be." She stood, gathering her books. "The Ashworths wanted to destroy you too, Maya. They just planned to do it slower, keep you trapped, keep you compliant, until you became just like them. I'm offering you an exit." She started to leave, then paused. What you do with it is up to you, but I hope you choose differently than they did. 3 years later, Maya Santos graduated summa cum laude from Columbia. She was accepted to 4 medical schools, ultimately choosing Johns Hopkins. Her essay was about the moment that changed her life, the day a girl she'd wronged offered her grace instead of destruction. She dedicated her career to immigrant health, working in underserved communities, remembering every day what it felt like to be powerless and trapped. She never forgot what Cynthia Calder had given her. Not just a fellowship, not just an opportunity, a chance to become someone different than the person she'd been. Cynthia graduated from Columbia with honors, then surprised everyone by declining a position at her father's company. Instead, she started a nonprofit focused on supporting first-generation college students, providing the resources and protection that students like Maya had never had. The organization was called the Eleanor Foundation, named after her mother. She never replaced the locket. Some things couldn't be replaced. But she found other ways to carry her mother forward. In every student she helped, in every cycle she broke, in every act of grace that rippled outward from the moment she chose mercy over destruction. Marcus Calder watched his daughter build something extraordinary. He'd always known she was special, but watching her choose kindness over vengeance, watching her transform pain into purpose, made him prouder than any business achievement ever had. Your mother would be amazed, he told her once. Cynthia shook her head. She wouldn't be amazed. She'd say this is exactly what she expected. She touched the spot on her chest where the locket used to rest. She taught me that broken things can become something new. You just have to decide what to build from the pieces. The end. Here's what Cynthia's story teaches us about power and grace. She had every tool to destroy Maya Santos. The evidence, the resources, the justification. No one would have blamed her for treating Maya the same way she treated the Ashworths. But Cynthia saw something the world missed. She saw a girl who was trapped, not evil, scared, not cruel, making terrible choices because she couldn't see any other options. And instead of adding to Maya's destruction, Cynthia offered her a door. That's the hardest kind of strength, not crushing enemies. Anyone with enough power can do that. But seeing the difference between people who choose cruelty and people who are crushed by circumstance, that takes wisdom. That takes grace. That takes the kind of love that Cynthia's mother spent her, life modeling. Maybe someone has hurt you. Maybe they were part of a system that caused you pain. Maybe you can't tell if they were villains or victims. Subscribe if you believe that the bravest thing you can do is offer grace to people who might not deserve it, because sometimes that's what transforms them into people who do. Because broken things can become something new. You just have to decide what to build from the pieces. Bye.